The roar of the crowd was deafening. Thousands of spectators filled the seats of Madison Square Garden, their cheers echoing off the walls and creating a symphony of excitement and anticipation. The energy in the air was electric, a palpable force that seemed to vibrate through every person present. Yet, Connor MacLeod heard nothing but the clang of steel and the quickened beat of his own heart. His focus was absolute, his mind a fortress against the cacophony surrounding him. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. His blade met that of Iman Fasil, sparks showering into the darkness of the arena. The clash of their swords was a symphony of metal, each strike a note in a deadly composition. The sparks illuminated their faces, revealing the intensity and determination etched into their features. This was no ordinary duel. This was a battle fought across centuries, a secret war waged beneath the oblivious gaze of mortals. The arena, though modern, seemed to transform into a timeless battlefield, where the past and present collided in a dance of death. MacLeod, a man seemingly in his prime, moved with a speed and ferocity that belied his years. His movements were a blur, a testament to the centuries of combat experience that had honed his skills to perfection. Each swing of his sword was precise, each step calculated. Centuries of experience had honed his instincts to a razor's edge. He fought not just with strength, but with the wisdom of countless battles. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, missed nothing, always searching for the slightest hint of weakness in his opponent. He parried each blow with precision, his eyes searching for a weakness in his opponent's defense. Every move was a dance, a deadly ballet where one misstep could mean the end. His concentration was fierce, his determination unwavering. Facile, agile and cunning, was a worthy adversary. His movements were fluid, his strikes swift and unpredictable. He fought with a grace that belied the deadly intent behind each attack. The two warriors were evenly matched, their skills a testament to their long and storied histories. Their blades danced, a whirlwind of steel. The sound of metal on metal was relentless, a constant reminder of the stakes of this battle. Each clash was a test of strength, skill, and endurance, pushing both fighters to their limits. Each strike was a lightning bolt, charged with power and purpose. The force behind their blows was immense, each one capable of ending the fight in an instant. The energy of their combat was almost tangible, a force that seemed to crackle in the air around them. The air crackled with energy. It was as if the very atmosphere was charged with the intensity of their duel, a silent witness to the epic struggle unfolding within the arena. The spectators could feel it too, their excitement and tension building with each passing moment. Around them, the world faded away. Only the fight remained. The noise of the crowd, the lights of the arena, all became distant memories as the two warriors focused solely on each other. In that moment, nothing else mattered but the duel. Then, in a flash, it was over. The final strike came with a swiftness that took everyone by surprise. The culmination of their battle, a single moment that decided the outcome of their epic struggle. MacLeod, with a swift and decisive move, disarmed Facile. His sword flew from his hand, clattering to the ground as the crowd gasped in unison. The duel had reached its climax, and the victor stood tall, his eyes still burning with the intensity of the fight. The crowd held its breath, the silence almost unbearable. The energy that had filled the arena moments before was now replaced with a tense stillness, as everyone waited to see what would happen next. In that moment, time itself seemed to stop. The world held its breath, suspended in the aftermath of the duel. The intensity of the battle lingered in the air, a reminder of the epic struggle that had just taken place. The Highlands of Scotland, 1536, a raw, untamed beauty. The landscape, with its rolling hills and mist-covered peaks, seemed almost otherworldly. It was a place where legends were born, and myths took on a life of their own. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of ancient pine trees and the earthy aroma of damp soil. It was a land that held secrets, whispered through the rustling leaves and the gentle flow of streams. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Every breath taken in this mystical place felt like a connection to the past, to the countless generations that had walked these lands before. The fog that rolled through the pine forests added an element of mystery, shrouding the landscape in a veil of secrecy. It was in this enigmatic setting that the story of Connor MacLeod began to unfold. It was here, amidst the heather and the glens, that Connor MacLeod, a young warrior of the Clan MacLeod, first tasted the bitter truth of his destiny. As a young man, Connor was full of life and vigor, eager to prove himself in battle and bring honor to his clan. Little did he know that his fate was already sealed, written in the stars long before he took his first breath. He remembered the battle against the menacing Kurgan as if it were yesterday. The clash of swords, the cries of the wounded, and the smell of blood filled the air. It was a day that would forever change the course of his life. The Kurgan, a fearsome warrior with a reputation for brutality, was unlike any enemy Connor had ever faced. His presence on the battlefield was like a dark storm, bringing death and destruction in his wake. The clash of steel, the screams of dying men, the chilling laughter of the Kurgan as he cut through Connor's comrades. Each swing of the Kurgan's sword was precise and deadly, leaving a trail of fallen warriors in its path. Connor fought valiantly, but he was no match for the Kurgan's sheer strength and ferocity. The battlefield was a chaotic symphony of violence, a brutal dance of life and death. Then the Kurgan's blade found him, a searing pain ripping through his side. The world seemed to slow down as Connor fell to the ground, his vision blurring from the agony. He could feel the life draining from his body, the cold embrace of death closing in. In that moment, he was certain that his time had come, that he would join his ancestors in the afterlife. He should have died that day. By all accounts, his wounds were fatal, and no mortal man could have survived such an injury. The battlefield was littered with the bodies of the fallen, a grim reminder of the cost of war. Connor's comrades lay around him, their lifeless eyes staring into the void. It was a scene of utter devastation, a testament to the brutality of the Kurgan's assault. He should have joined his fallen brethren. The weight of his mortality pressed down on him, and he felt a profound sense of sorrow for the lives lost that day. The battlefield was silent now, the echoes of battle fading into the distance. It was a place of mourning, where the living paid their respects to the dead and remembered the sacrifices made. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the battlefield, something miraculous happened. Connor's wounds began to heal, the pain subsiding as if it had never been. He rose from the ground, his body restored to its former strength. It was as if he had been given a second chance, a new lease on life. He rose from the ground, his wound miraculously healed. The scar that remained was a reminder of the battle he had fought, but it was also a symbol of his newfound resilience. He was no longer the same man who had entered the battlefield that day. Something within him had changed, something that set him apart from the rest of humanity. The look on the Kurgan's face, a mixture of shock and rage, was forever burned into his memory. The Kurgan had believed he had claimed another victim, but instead, he had unwittingly unleashed something far more powerful. Connor's survival was an affront to the natural order, a defiance of the laws of life and death. It was a moment that would haunt both men for the rest of their lives. He was different now, touched by something ancient and powerful, something that defied the natural order of life and death. He was immortal. This newfound immortality was both a gift and a curse, a burden that he would carry for eternity. It set him on a path filled with challenges and adversaries, but also one of discovery and self-realization. Connor MacLeod's journey had only just begun, and the Highlands of Scotland would forever be etched in his soul as the place where it all started. 1985. New York City, a sprawling metropolis, was a place where dreams were made and broken. The city never slept, its streets alive with the hustle and bustle of millions of souls, each with their own story to tell. New York City throbbed with a chaotic energy. The air was thick with the sounds of honking taxis, the chatter of street vendors, and the constant hum of life. It was a city that thrived on its own frenetic pace, a place where the past and present collided in a whirlwind of activity. But for Connor MacLeod, the city was merely another backdrop in the grand theater of his existence. He moved through the crowded streets like a ghost, unnoticed and unremarkable. To the untrained eye, he was just another face in the crowd, but those who looked closer could sense there was something different about him. He had lived through centuries, witnessed empires rise and fall, seen the face of the world change time and again. From the ancient Highlands of Scotland to the bustling streets of New York, MacLeod had seen it all. The weight of history was etched into his very soul, a constant reminder of the passage of time. Yet, the past was never truly gone. It lingered, a constant shadow. Memories of battles fought and lost, of friends and foes long gone, haunted him. The ghosts of his past were always with him, whispering in the dark corners of his mind. The duel with Fassel had drawn unwanted attention. The clash of steel in the dead of night had not gone unnoticed. It was a reminder that no matter how much he tried to blend in, his past would always catch up with him. The police, led by the tenacious detective Robert Kurgan, swarmed around him, their faces etched with suspicion. Kurgan was a man who thrived on solving puzzles, and MacLeod was the most intriguing puzzle he had ever encountered. The detective's instincts told him there was more to MacLeod than met the eye. They sensed there was something more to him than met the eye. The way he carried himself, the look in his eyes, it all hinted at a deeper story. They couldn't put their finger on it, but they knew he was different. It was as if he was out of place, out of time. They couldn't explain it, but they knew he was different. The evidence from the scene of the duel was baffling. There were no clear answers, only more questions. The police were left scratching their heads, trying to piece together a puzzle that seemed to defy logic. Meanwhile, Brenda Wyatt, a beautiful and brilliant criminalist, found herself drawn to the mystery surrounding MacLeod. She was a woman of science, driven by a need to understand the world around her. The evidence from the duel was unlike anything she had ever seen, and it piqued her curiosity. The evidence from the duel was like nothing she had ever seen. It defied explanation. The metal of the swords, the way they had been forged, it was all wrong. It was as if they belonged to another time, another world. Brenda's mind raced with possibilities, each more fantastical than the last. Her scientific mind craved answers, but the truth, she would soon discover, was far stranger than anything she could have imagined. The mystery of Connor MacLeod was about to unravel, and with it, the secrets of a past that refused to stay buried. He appeared in Connor's life like a bolt from the blue, a flamboyant Spaniard who called himself Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez. Ramirez was another immortal, one who had walked the earth for centuries, and he knew the secret of Connor's true nature. Under Ramirez's tutelage, Connor began to understand the true extent of his abilities, the immense power that coursed through his veins. He learned of the Gathering, the inevitable clash of immortals that had played out across the ages, a battle to the death for a mysterious prize. More importantly, he found in Ramirez a kindred spirit, a friend who understood the burden of immortality, the loneliness of living a life outside of time. But their time together, like all things in Connor's life, was destined to be cut short. The Kurgan, the same monstrous immortal who had taken Connor's first life centuries ago, found them. The Kurgan was a force of nature, a whirlwind of violence and sheer cruelty. He craved the prize with every fiber of his being, and he would stop at nothing to claim it. Their training ground became a battleground, the air thick with the smell of ozone and blood. Ramirez, despite his age and wisdom, was no match for the Kurgan's raw power. He fell, as all immortals eventually must, his head severed from his body. Connor watched in horror, his heart ripped apart by grief and rage. But Ramirez's death was not in vain. With his dying breath, he transferred his knowledge and power to Connor, entrusting him to be the one to defeat the Kurgan and claim the prize. The mantle of responsibility was passed, and Connor, fueled by grief and vengeance, vowed to avenge his fallen friend.